Welcome to Maryl Today, where we break down topics that matter, mind, heart, and soul, and break through to solutions you can use to improve your life or business today. I'm your host, Maryl Celiz Paz, and this week's topic is mindful inquiry. If you feel like you're not in control of your mind and your thoughts overwhelm you, this episode will help you ask the right questions to get you where you need and want to be. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the show. I am psyched you could join us for what I'm sure will be an insightful chat with my guest today, Ora Nadrich. Ora is a life coach and mindfulness meditation teacher, as well as the author of Says Who, a book that teaches how asking yourself some very simple questions can change the way you think and live forever. Ora, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
As a journalist and also a coach, I understand how crucial it is to ask questions, but I think very few people, both when I've been in corporate environments or when I've been in other environments, really put a value into asking questions. So my first question for you would be, why is it so important to ask ourselves questions?
Well, we think between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day. That's an extraordinary amount of thinking that's going on in our heads daily. And the thoughts that get our attention the most are the thoughts that have the most energy on them. And we accept those thoughts, be it negative or fear-based. We usually accept them readily. We don't question them. So that means that we accept thoughts that are actually not good for us. Thoughts that are undermining, that are sabotaging, that have us really question our value and our worth. So it's really important to question those negative and fear-based thoughts to find out if they're even true or not.
How did you, we'll talk about the Says Who method, but how did you get into understanding why this was so important and what drove you to write the book?
Well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time and it's a very long story, but I'll encapsulate it to that I've always been on a deep psychospiritual journey. I've been very curious about the way our thoughts work, and I had a personal crisis in my life when I was not quite 15, and that was that my sister had a mental breakdown, and it was very traumatic. And when we go into fight or flight, thoughts rush to the foreground of our minds, and oftentimes they're very fear-based because we feel that our survival is threatened. And so there was a thought that came to the foreground of my mind, and that was that what happened to my sister was going to happen to me. That was a fear-based thought. I buried it in my subconscious, and I started to feel what I talk about in my book, Says Who. When we are not aware of a thought that we have, we are oftentimes at the effect of a thought, and we begin to feel the side effects or the symptoms of a thought gone unnoticed. And for me, it was anxiety. And fast forward, I became a life coach many years later and started to see a pattern in my clients that they were very much like I was until I became very aware of the fear-based thought that I had. People oftentimes are not, so they're walking around very much at the effect of a thought, and I started to help my clients become aware of the thoughts that were causing them so much anxiety, so much fear, so much unhappiness. And then I worked with a particular client who had a fear-based thought that she was very much at the effect of, and pretty much started the Says Who method with her right then and there. And it was very effective. I started asking her questions, questioning her fear-based thought, and I realized I was onto something that was very effective, and I created the book Says Who and the Says Who method.
Can you share with us one such example from one of your clients where you've applied the method? What was the thought, and what was the shift?
Well, I'll use her as an example because that's really the genesis of the book, and that's where it all began for me. She came to me wanting to start a new business, and she was a creative woman, and I thought that she wanted to process this idea that she had to start a new business. Right in the beginning of our session together, she said to me, "Ora, I have a thought, a very frightening thought that keeps coming up for me. And it comes up a lot. And lately it's been really rearing its head. And I can't get out from under it. And it's really got me scared. And I said, do you want to share it with me? And she said, I do, although she seemed like she had some shame around it, you know? And again, it was very not what I thought she wanted to share with me. Again, she wanted to start a new business, but clearly she had a thought that had taken hold in her mind. So the thought was that she was having that she was going to be homeless and penniless. And the expression that you just had was the expression that I had. It was the most incongruous thought I felt to what she was about to do, which was to start a new business. And I recognized it immediately as this is a fear-based thought. I was able to notice and identify that as such because of my own background and what I had been through. So I don't know where it came from, but all of a sudden through me in this moment, I asked her, says who? That's just the go-to question that I thought to ask her. Says who? Who is saying that you're going to be homeless?
And what did she say?
Well, her eyes widened like saucers. She looked completely thrown off her guard, and that no one had clearly ever asked her that, nor had she asked it herself. Who is saying that I'm going to be homeless? And I took it one step farther, which has become the second question of the says who method. I said, have you ever heard someone say that before? Have you ever heard that you were going to be homeless? Had anyone ever told you that you were going to be homeless? I just had a very strong instinct that she had heard that before. I was going completely on instinct, by the way. I had not written my book yet. When I asked her the question, have you heard that said before, that you were going to be homeless? Did someone say that to you? Well, she changed right before me. She actually looked very, very emotional. And
did it trigger something for her?
It triggered something in her immediately. It triggered something in her to the point where she got emotional, her eyes filled with tears, and I said, what's going on? You seem like there's something going on for you right now. What is it? Do you want to share it with me? And she said, wow, my father used to always say that. My father sometimes would be out of work and money was scarce, and he would come home and he would rage and he would say, we're going to be homeless, we're going to be on the streets, we're going to have to live out of the car. And she would become petrified as a young child, and she would go to sleep petrified and really filled with fear. So that was an aha moment, because I realized that thought that was her thought really didn't originate with her. It was her father's fear-based thought, which had now become hers. Not now meaning in the present, meaning that she had taken on a fear of her father's, and it had become her belief that one day she was going to be homeless and penniless. And that was a huge breakthrough for her, to realize that this fear-based thought that she had had for so long, but was really rearing her head. And I want to just add, when she was about to start a business. So what was that thought trying to do? Sabotage her.
Stop her from doing this.
Right, exactly right. So I knew that was something really important to follow.
Do you find that, you know, as I was reading your book, I was thinking, you know, who are these people that are telling us these things, right? Who are these people that we listen to and that make such an impact that, you know, then those thoughts stay with us, and then they you know, they rear their heads when things like this get triggered. Do you find that a lot of this starts in childhood, and who are we listening to, and why are we listening to people?
Yes, absolutely. And so many of the people that I've worked with, my clients, they will bring into a session with me a fear-based or negative thought that we are able to identify with that second question, have I heard someone say this thought before? That they will connect the dots, that oftentimes the things that were told to us in childhood, be it a parent, a teacher, an authority figure, the bully on the schoolyard. How many of us can remember the first time we were bullied? Do you know, and that we have that realization that so much of what we carry over into adulthood has in fact started from childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured so, because you know, you mentioned the example with, you know, her going back to childhood, and I love something that you say in your book, which is, you know, in childhood we don't have that power to discern between the thoughts, like you say, there's thoughts that are useful and productive, and we, get to choose to keep those, and thoughts that are not. So as adults, we do have that power, yeah?
Absolutely we do, but it's amazing that even the skill sets that we don't have as children, in adulthood, if we don't question those thoughts, if we don't question those negative and fear-based thoughts, then we're pretty much accepting those thoughts to be true and real for us, just like we did in childhood. So that's why, going back to your first question, why it's so important, the mindful inquiry. It's so important to question our thoughts, to find out if they're even real or not, or true, or we're living our lives suffering by a thought that maybe originated in childhood.
This is so interesting. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Ora is going to share with us the key questions to ask that will change our thoughts and lives forever. In other words, the Says Who method. Stay tuned. Okay.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Cuando estaba en crianza temporal, nunca sabía cuándo me iba a tener que mudar, así que siempre tenía mi maleta lista. Y un día me adoptaron. Mis nuevos padres me abrieron sus corazones y su hogar. Ellos me cocinan mi desayuno favorito todas las mañanas. Mis padres me llevan a viajes que jamás pensé podría ir. Me dieron un hogar y una mejor excusa para usar esa maleta. Mis padres no son perfectos, pero son perfectos para mí.
Welcome back to the conversation with Ora Nadrich on the topic of mindful inquiry. Ora, before I even ask you the Says Who questions, you say in your book that we have to be on observer mode and not reactive mode. That comes before even going to the questions. Why does that help set the sort of the stage for the process?
Because being an observer has us not react to the thoughts that come up for us. We know how quick we are. We have such a knee-jerk reaction to reacting to the thoughts that come up in our mind. Do you know, I use the example of road rage in my book because, not that you have to go into exact road rage, but somebody cuts you off in traffic or does something, or takes that parking space that you want, and what comes up quickly in the foreground of your mind are thoughts that have us reacting. Our heart starts racing. We're about to say something to somebody that we wish we hadn't. So when we go into observation mode, the observer, we have an awareness. It's mindfulness, which is being in the present moment with total awareness. When we have an awareness, the observer, we can be aware of when a thought starts to percolate, when it starts to come up, and we're about to want to say something that we wish we hadn't. That's why it's so helpful to be the observer so you don't react to those thoughts.
How easy is that? Because I know in your book you also say it's easy to apply all this stuff. Is that an easy thing? Because I feel for me it's a challenge not to react. I know there's a difference between responding and reacting. I'm aware of the, having to witness your own thoughts and all of that, but it's not easy.
It's not. And I didn't write a quick fix book. I didn't write that this is just, this 1, 2, 3, and then you've got it down. This takes practice. This takes commitment like anything else. It's like saying you want to get into shape. Well, you have to exercise. You're not going to do one workout and then you're going to be in great shape and never have to work out again. We know that's not realistic. So something like the observer mode, which I talk about, go into observation mode. The more you practice being an observer, the more you catch yourself being a reactor, knowing that I'm about to say something to this person that I'm going to regret saying. The more you practice that and catch it as the observer, like anything else, you're building a muscle. You're strengthening a muscle, and anybody can strengthen that muscle.
So give us these magical Says Who method questions. There are about 7 questions, yeah?
There's 7 very simple, very what I call user-friendly questions. Now they sound very simple, and they are, but they go deep. So the first question, which is the title of the book, says who, and I commend anybody who takes that first step, because when you ask the question, says who, what you're really asking is, who is saying this thought in my mind? It's really taking ownership of the thought that you have, as uncomfortable as it may be, because we know that our inner dialogue can be very critical. So when you say, says who, question number one, who is saying that I'm not worthy? Who is saying that I'm not lovable? Who is saying that I'm never going to be successful? Who is saying all the different things that we tell ourselves that are critical? You are really taking that first step by saying, I am telling myself that I'm not worthy, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not lovable, that I'm never going to be successful. So that is a very important first question. Says who? Second question, my personal favorite, do I like this thought?
I love that question. I've been practicing that question the entire weekend.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you're using it, because it's so logical. These questions are very logical, because it really, what it does is it makes us recognize how illogical it is to accept thoughts that we don't like. Second question, second question, I'm sorry, was, have I heard someone say this thought before?
Ah, that's right.
Right,
yes.
which we just covered. And again, important.
Was it a parent? Was it a teacher?
Exactly.
Was it somebody?
Important to identify so that you can connect your negative thought maybe to somebody who it originated. Third question, the favorite. Do I like this thought? How many of our negative thoughts are not likable? Do you know, we accept them and we don't even like them.
Right.
I've worked with so many clients asking that question. One client in particular who said, no, I don't like that thought, that she kept saying to herself over and over again in her mind, to the point where I got her to say, I actually hate it. I hate that thought.
And
so,
it's like, why are you hosting it in your mind?
Exactly.
Why are you giving it space and time and energy?
That's right,
if you
which
don't even
we
like it?
do.
Right,
we
do.
let that thought stick around in our mind. We let it, basically occupy our mind, and we become like a hostage to that thought.
Yes.
So then the fourth question, does this thought make me feel better? Again, a no-brainer.
Again, do I like the way this makes me feel, right? Do I accept this in my life?
Well, how does a negative thought really make you feel better? Does it make you feel good about yourself? Does it inspire you? Does it motivate you? Does it make you feel positive? Does it make you feel that you are those things, worthy, likable, lovable? Do you know, it's so counterintuitive to using thoughts that really are positive and helpful for our well-being.
And helpful is a key word, right? Is it productive to me? Because I think a lot of times, maybe you say, well, a lot of the questions you ask, I feel like, are people giving themselves permission to want to be happy and to be okay, to be,
That's right.
Hey, it's okay for me to want to be, fulfilled and happy and to like the things, have the things in my life that I like. Because I think a lot of times, Says who helps you identify too that maybe you didn't have those permissions when you were younger, or you interpreted something that said, hey, no, you're not allowed to feel worthy or fulfilled or whatever. I see that a lot.
That is such a good point. I thank you for bringing that up. That is so true. People don't know until they do the inquiry, until they question those thoughts that don't have their back, that are really not supporting their well-being. I've had people say to me, wow, or I never even thought to question my thoughts before, which means I never thought to question that thought that makes me feel so bad about myself, because perhaps I never thought I had permission to do so.
Question 5.
Question 5 is, does this thought work for me? How, again, these are very logical, straightforward questions. How is that negative thought working for you? Is it helping you get something done? Is it helping you go out and look for the job that you think you are worthy of and capable of? Do you know, if it's not working for you favorably, then it really is of no use to you.
Question 6.
Question 6 is, do I want to keep this thought or let it go?
Okay, so that's where you evaluate after. Do I like it? Does it make me feel good?
Sorry, I'm going ahead of myself with my own method here. That's so
okay.
funny. Does this thought have power over me? Do you know, again, very important. I was getting to the final let it go. I'm so eager to have
I know, because I
like have everybody let go of that. Yeah, release it. Is, does this thought feel like it controls you or has power over you? So many people will say to me, wow, Ora, I feel so taken over by this thought. And if you think about it, these are our thoughts, it's our mind, and we are creating these thoughts, which means we have the power to change them. And then that brings us to the 7th final question. Do you want to keep this thought or let it go? you have a choice.
And
we
that's the
always have a
discernment.
choice. That
Yeah.
is the discernment.
And the acknowledging of the fact that we do have a choice, right? Where
We do. We may not always feel that way.
Right.
We may feel, again, not in power. But as I say in my book, Says Who, you are the creator and master of your internal dialogue, which creates your reality. That's how powerful we are.
Well, we're gonna take another quick break, but we will be right back. Still to come, my conclusions on the topic and conversation, so stay with us.
Encuentra el bosque más cercano en descubreelbosque.org. El bosque, más cerca de lo que crees.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Here's what I want to leave you with. As Ora says in her book, we cannot rely on others to define what is real for us. Each of us is our own leader and must guide ourselves towards a healthy, productive life worth living. So take inventory of your thoughts, use the Says Who method of mindful inquiry, and take action to keep those thoughts that serve and let go of those that you don't need. Remember that your thoughts create your reality, and it's up to you to determine what you want that reality to be. My hope for you today is that you learned a useful way to question your thoughts and keep your mind uncluttered and clear so that you can hold and nourish a magnificent vision of your life. Keep in mind that methods are only useful when you apply them, so be consistent and you will see that as your mind content improves, so will your life. I'd like to thank my guest Ora Nadrich for sharing her Says Who method with us, and thank you always to my wonderful sponsors and my amazing crew, and all the gratitude in the world to you, our viewers, for joining us today. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Maryl Tweets and Facebook and Insta at Maryl Celiz Paz for more insights and inspiration. Until next time, I'm Maryl Celiz Paz, wishing you and yours paz, amor y luz.